let's celebrate the life that quote unquote got in the way. I say it that way just as a perspective shift because I can think of some of the most expensive, unexpected life events that have happened in my life have been some of the most joyous ones. Like the birth of a child, for example. We had no idea that she was going to be born 2 months prematurely and what that would look like. You look back and not only did those things bring extra joy into our lives, but they also taught us so many lessons. Some of the reasons that I know what I do about life insurance and health insurance and all of these areas of life is because I had to go through it. I got to dig in and really start to learn about those different areas. And it's what's made me who I am today.
Welcome to the Christ Centered Stewardship podcast with your hosts, Maria Casillas and Nino Villa. Christ Centered Stewardship is a ministry of new money habits designed to equip believers to steward everything God has given them, including their time, talent, and treasure in ways that bring Him honor, glory, and praise. You can join our growing community on Facebook and submit your questions to podcast at newmoneyhabits.com. Now, to begin today's episode, here is Maria Casillas and Nino Villa.
Maria, we are 6 months in, 6 months down, 6 months to go. It is mid-year time. You're shaking your head no, like in disbelief.
I just can't believe it.
It happens just that quick. And so it's an excellent time to do what we call a mid-year reset. Kind of take a look back, see what has worked, what hasn't worked, where have we made progress, where have we not made the progress we had hoped, and to look forward, what are we going to do differently so that we can achieve all the things that we set out to achieve in 2026.
Awesome. I'm here for it.
Anytime we have this mid-year reset conversation, there's a couple of things that I like to focus on. One, it starts with, if we're taking a look back, we're usually looking back at our New Year's resolutions. Now, anybody who knows me knows I'm not the biggest fan of New Year's resolutions, but that's neither here nor there. We're going to look at what did we set out to do in 2026. The second thing is I like to help people really focus in on the progress that has been made, because while we may not have done everything we set out to do right away, that doesn't mean we haven't made progress towards some of those goals. So that's what I like to look at.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So I, as many of our listeners may or may not know, that I homeschool two of my kids. And one of the things that I've noticed is that it's very easy to get down on myself if I haven't done, quote unquote, all the things that I'm supposed to be doing. And to your point, Nino, sometimes it's important to take a step back and go, what have you done and how has it impacted the kids up until now, so that you can then not just celebrate, but actually, just enjoy the fruits of some of that labor. And then it's more of that reset of, okay, now how can I do more? What can I do even better? Rather than, well, I haven't met my entire goal, and so it's all for nothing.
As we look back, I think sometimes there are those who are going to see that they haven't made the progress that they wanted, so they do think it's all for naught, that they that they have failed. And I think that is stinking thinking. It's not that you have failed. Maybe you just haven't made the progress that you wanted to. And so I think there's three categories. One, maybe you are tracking exactly where you wanted to be, and so it's easy to celebrate. Two, you've made progress, but just not the progress that you wanted. And three, maybe you didn't even get started. And so you're kicking yourself in the pants and you're like, I set out with these goals, but I have made zero progress towards any of them. And I want to say, who cares? Because you know what? You don't need a new year to get things started. You don't even need a new month. You don't even need a new week today. Today could be the day you start something new.
Yeah. I hope we talk a little bit about the realistic nature of whatever goals you set out to begin with as well, because that is one area that you didn't mention that I think sometimes we instead just look at the results and forget to look at the reality of what we set out to do in the first place and ask ourselves, was it realistic for us to do that? Or were we setting ourselves up for failure?
Yeah, have that conversation, because I think that's where it starts. Is you set some goals or you set some resolutions at the beginning of the year, and one of the things you have to ask yourself is, were they realistic? Was I realistic with the goals that I set?
I know this happens a lot of times with our clients as well, where they'll just be all gung ho and, starry eyed and set up this beautiful budget and it looks so fantastic on paper. And they forget one small element, and it's called life. And life hits them really hard, smacks them in the face, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't plan for life, so now this doesn't look so pretty anymore." And instead of being able to just kind of reset some of that, they just throw it up and say, "Never mind, budgeting doesn't work."
Yeah, I have sat down with a particular client of ours this year, and there was a couple of different competing financial goals for the year, but one specifically was a $5,000 credit card that our client wanted to be paid off this year in 2026. And so when we got started, there was a $5,000 balance, as I said, and the question became, well, when within the year did we want to have that paid off? And so looking at the budget, looking at surplus and just what can we manage, it was like, hey, maybe we can throw about $500 a month at this thing so that in 10 months it's paid. Well, if you and I were having this conversation just 3 months ago, I'd have told you that we were not tracking on pace to have it paid off in 10 months. That we weren't hitting the $500 goal every month. We were getting close. Some months we were, a couple of months we were short. And therefore, this card was not going to be paid off by the time she had wanted it to be paid off. Well, now that we're having the conversation here at the midway point, not only are we on track, oh, wait, hold up, we've already paid it off.
Oh, wow.
It's done. She can look back and celebrate the fact that she got there ahead of time. But just a few short months ago, we weren't tracking on pace. And so that became a sense of frustration for her, in which I had to help her remember, like, look, some other things happened. Life came up, as you said, and you were able to cash flow those things. What we didn't do is we didn't incur new debt or more debt to take care of those things. What we did is we just said, hey, we're not going to be as aggressive paying down this one debt so that we can cash flow these other things. And so life comes up. But the other part of that is there was some extra money earlier than expected that it was like, hey, we can actually knock this thing out right now. We did so taking a little bit of a risk, but that risk is paid off, and so now she gets to celebrate.
Lovely. That's really great. Congratulations to her and to you for walking her through that, Coach.
Thank you. And that's the story, is that I want everybody to kind of think about the progress that they've made and really celebrate the progress that you have made, because life does get in the way. And while you may have had to cash flow an emergency here or there, that if you've made progress, celebrate the progress you have made, and then just reset and say, okay, now that I'm accounting for life as well, let me revisit this goal. Let me kind of reset it and test whether or not it's realistic.
One other thing I would say, Nino, is let's also celebrate the life that quote unquote got in the way. And I say it that way just as a perspective shift, because I can think of some of the most expensive, unexpected life events that have happened in my life have been some of the most joyous ones. Like the birth of a child, for example, when we would set up a budget and stuff, there were so many things that we wouldn't have guessed. Either we didn't know we were going to have a child, or once that was inevitable, we had no idea that she was going to be born, 2 months prematurely, and what that would look like, and just all of those things. And And it's just like you look back, and not only did those things bring extra joy into our lives, but they also taught us so many lessons. Some of the reasons that I know what I do about life insurance and health insurance and all of these areas of life is because I had to go through it. And so instead of just, throwing my hands up and being like, well, I guess this is one more thing I don't know, I got to dig in and really start to learn about those different areas. And it's what's made me who I am today. So it's easy sometimes to say, well, we didn't plan for life and it just took us off track. But let's consider a little bit of a perspective shift and actually celebrate that life that came our way.
I like the idea that you're learning from those lessons as well. Like as life comes along, it's a teachable moment. It's an opportunity to learn something new. I know that for our client, as we were paying this debt off, it was a lesson in 0% interest. That was part of it. Part of the reason for wanting to pay it off was not to exceed the 0% interest time period. The other part of that was how to manage these other unknowns or these other unexpecteds as they came up. And so, right, it was this learning opportunity after learning opportunity rather than woe is me or head in the sand. It was just, okay, let's grab life by the horns and say, all right, what can we learn from this? And I think one of the biggest lessons she may have learned, I don't want to speak for her, but I think I know her well enough to be like, the even zero interest credit charges are like, yeah, I don't know that I want to do that again.
There's a reason that they rope us into those things.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Because they know that like 80 to 90% of people will not get it paid off before the interest, zero interest time period runs out. And therefore, they'll get hit with a huge, if she had allowed it to go past that period, I think we're talking like 30% interest. Yeah, and that's just insane.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Those are some tough lessons to learn for sure.
Yeah. So that's looking a little bit backwards. What about looking forward? I know that you do a lot with just the fact that like you homeschool and you're going from one school year to the next. And so you're always kind of looking ahead and planning and mapping. What advice would you have for our listeners about you're resetting? You've looked back to see, hey, what progress have I made? But now as you're mapping things forward, what do you do?
Yeah, it's ironic because the mid-year reset for us right now would be like the end of year school reset, right? So it's technically at the end/beginning of a year. But having said that, there typically is about 3 to 4 months in between. And that's a time that we really try to utilize to, like you said, identify what worked really well, not just for us, but also for our children, for the way that the home is organized, for the curricula that you used and things like that. And then what that didn't work so well. And admittedly, that second list is typically a lot longer for me than the first list is, which is maybe why I try to sit there and go, let's talk about the first list because we don't want to forget that things actually did go well. But I think one of the things to look at is all of the parties involved. And so for us, it is, like I said, the parents, other teachers, or part of your community, it's your children, it's the curricula, all of that. So when we're talking about our finances, there are not just ourselves involved. We might also have what went well for our spouse, what went well for our children, if we have children, what went well for the entire family unit, which is different than just your individual selves, spouse, and children. And then, like you said, Nino, what are some of the tools that worked really well in our favor? What are some of the tools that maybe sucked us in and didn't work so well? And just trying to understand what do we want moving forward. I think that's the other thing too. When I said let's have the discussion about was that a realistic goal to start with, I think it's important to ask ourselves, was it realistic? But also, do we still want that thing moving forward? And if we do, is it something that needs to be tweaked a little bit? I mean, are we if we set a specific goal and either we could say that we didn't meet it because it was unrealistic, or we could say we didn't meet it because we didn't work hard enough, or that we didn't make the right decisions along the way. There's all sorts of reasons that something might not work out. Regardless, we need to stop and say, is it even something that I still want? And if it is, how can I now, get more of that thing or get closer to it? And if not, it's okay to completely squash it or to just tweak it a little bit. I don't think there's any shame in changing that up, because as long as you're not changing it just because you no longer think that you're capable of doing it, if it's something that you truly realized, I don't even want that anymore, I think that's okay.
I will share an example in my own financial landscape that I think would surprise a lot of people. And it was after you and I had a conversation years ago about this idea of paying off debt aggressively and paying it down, that in certain circumstances, for instance, like an installment loan like student loans, I can start to make aggressive payments and I will pay it off early, but what won't change between now and then is the monthly minimum payment that's required, right? Mm-hmm. So there will be no change to how much I owe monthly, and I'm then also parting ways with cash on hand to pay it down early. So like 7 years ago now, I made the decision that I was going to refinance my student loans into an low interest, get them out of the government, and I was doing income-based repayment, and that was just keeping me in debt even longer because my income-based repayment wasn't even covering the interest, and so my loans were growing, not shrinking, and it was all just stupid. And I could afford to pay more, I just didn't want to at the time. So I was like, no, you know what? I'm going to refinance these things into a 10-year low-interest loan, and then I'm just going to pay the minimum monthly payments. And yes, I will be paying interest over the 10 years. But what I won't be doing is I won't be parting ways with thousands and thousands of extra dollars that could be used to put food on the table, keep a roof over the head. Like, I'm just going to do this. And because I didn't, as much as I would have loved to just eliminate my student loans, I didn't want it badly enough to leave my family wanting. So I was like, you know what? I don't want this anymore. Not like that, I don't. Now, that was 7 years ago, which means we are 3 years away from those things finally being paid off. And now they're getting to a point where I could maybe take a swing at them and just knock them out, right? When I think about when we got started, my student loan was somewhere in the $50,000 range, and I didn't have $50,000 just laying around to pay the thing off, so I didn't also have the monthly payment. But now that thing's around $19,000 or $17,000 or $15,000, it's like, like maybe I will pay it off early, but not by parting ways with thousands of dollars earlier, but making a decision now that, like, hey, that's actually within striking distance. And so maybe now I will. But you helped me to realize, like, no, I didn't want that thing that I thought I wanted as badly as I thought I wanted it.
Yeah, it's interesting when we have competing interests going on. And I think that's kind of just life in general. But it helps us to just slow down and ask ourselves, if we have these competing interests, which one is going to win out in this moment? And in that scenario, your family won out rather than just this random goal. It probably wasn't super random, but this other goal that you had set for whatever reason. And so I think that's lovely that you were able to shift that and just say, you know what, my family's going to come first in this particular one.
Yeah, it really was that, I fell in love with the idea of being debt free. The idea of, like, absolutely no debt except maybe the mortgage, and then eventually not even the mortgage. And that sounds awesome. But it meant parting ways with $50,000 that, no, not today. Not when I need that to pay the mortgage and keep food on the table. Absolutely not. I will just suck it up and take the $500 a month payment hit, but at least I'm only parting ways with $500 each month. What is that, like $6,000 a year, rather than separating $50,000 from my bank account in one day. So let's transition into our Ask the Coaches segment. I saw a post on a Facebook group that I really kind of wanted to address. There is a question kind of baked in there, but there was more of a statement first that I couldn't have agreed with more. But Jessica had posted, so I'm starting to think monthly budgeting may be a problem. And that got my attention because I was like, yep, I agree with that. Now, Jessica goes on to say, not always, but sometimes, because some months are just expensive for no good reason, whether it's insurance, kids stuff, summer, Christmas, Costco pulling me in. I love that one because I always talk about how Costco tells me what I want when I'm there. Just happened again yesterday. Anyway, that's a different story for a different
Sundays
day.
are bad for that.
Yes. And then she goes on to say, and then my monthly budget looks terrible, but I think maybe it's more about looking at the full year. One expensive month feels easier to swallow when the whole year still works. Has anyone else realized this or had their own budgeting light bulb moment? And that's the question I want to kind of answer, because while I agree with Jessica's first statement about monthly budgets may be the problem, I absolutely disagree at looking at the year, because looking at a year or looking at a month can kind of give you a general outlook and overview of how that month or that year might go. But as we talked about earlier, life gets in the way of our yearly plan. Mm-hmm. And so I would actually suggest that you need a better plan, a plan for each pay period, because while, again, the year or the month is a nice overview, you really do need a plan for every paycheck.
So I don't disagree with you. I don't know what Jessica specifically was saying, but what I think this does here for us, Nino, is what you're talking about is how to plan forward, and how I would at least use what she's saying. I'm not saying that she meant this, but I would use what she's saying as a way to look back. So when so she's saying, like, that one statement, I think it's more about looking at the full year. One expensive month feels easier to swallow when the whole year still works. And so that's the piece where I'm like, if you're trying to quote unquote swallow the month, like realize, oh, that was a tough month. It's almost like if you have an idea at the beginning of the year, what your whole year should look like overall, and then at the end of the year, you look back and it was about that, it's a little bit less gut punching. But in order to make that happen, you need to do what you just discussed, and that's plan according to your pay periods. So I think that there's room for both of those. What I think you are saying, and I agree with it 100%, is that the old way of budgeting used to be over a whole year. And that's really hard because we think it's unpredictable in a month. It is so unpredictable what can happen in the span of a year. And so planning is going to be very difficult for that. But I do think it'd be a really good tool to look back and say, oh, you know what? It wasn't so bad, because in the moment, like, as to her point, if you have one of those really bad months, you can look back and go, this isn't working, and then give up. But if you are looking back and saying, over the course of the whole year, actually, we were right on track, kind of to your point earlier, Nino, about your client who in the moment was behind on paying off her credit card, but in the whole span of it was able to do it earlier. That shifted the way that she looked at her abilities at that point.
Yeah. It's a really good point. And I like the idea of kind of a high level overview, but then you have to come and you have to zoom in and narrow into, but what's going on this paycheck? You know, I have this income coming in. These are the expenses that are due. Is there a surplus? Is there a deficit? If I'm in a deficit, how am I going to get out? How do I get income up? How do I get expenses down?
Agreed.
If I have a surplus, how am I managing that surplus in a way that helps me to achieve the financial goals I have, whether that is a savings goal, a debt elimination goal, a big purchase goal, whatever that is. And that's where like I said, I disagree with the idea that we need to go up the level. I want to come in a level,
Yep.
because I could not agree more that monthly budgets are not enough. Thinking about how like people would do it at the year and then they brought it down to the month, it's like bring it down one more level. Now, if you get paid once a month, like I pay myself once a month, so it's like, okay, a monthly budget works because on the first of the month, I'm taking care of everything. But for most of us, we're either paid bi-weekly or on the 1st and the 15th, that sort of thing. And so take a look at what's going on for that pay period. Now, if you need a tool to do that, you're in luck because we have the Payday Power Planner. And the link for that tool is always in the description, but you can download that for free, and it will help you to start at the month, but then drill down into the pay periods within that month so you can kind of see how are things working out. And, I use this obviously with our clients. There are clients of ours that I have been working with for nearly a decade. And all these years later, we were just looking at their things by paydays, and it was like, guys, one of your pay periods is just annihilated, right? It's when the mortgage comes out and the car insurance and. So it was like, hey, let's look at this and let's see how we can balance this out, because while they had a surplus, it would be like $29, and that to me is not a surplus. That a surplus does not make. But the other pay period, it would be like $1,200, and I'm like, let's find a way to balance this out. And so even all these years later, as life is going on and as things change and some expenses increase and some expenses get eliminated and all that, you still have to look at it pay period by pay period by pay period to say, what do we got going on and how can we manage what's coming in and what's going out to the best of our ability.
Yeah. And would you say, this is more of a question than a statement, that especially for somebody you've been working with for 10 years, that some of that becomes a little bit more natural for them? Or would you say that you are still in the weeds, whether you or they by themselves, and making sure that they touch that budget every single pay period? Or has it become something that, because they've been doing it for so long, it's almost on auto pay, for lack of a better word?
Autopilot, yes.
Autopilot, yeah, there we go. That it's kind of happening in the background because they've structured it so well.
Yeah, so with that particular couple, it is pretty much on autopilot, and that's something that they're managing for the most part on their own. As we meet, we'll take a look at it every once in a while. I have insight to it every time, so I'll go peek at it, and I just happen to notice, I'm like, guys, you are taking a lot of hits in your first pay period. What can we do to rectify some of that? So that was just kind of I wouldn't even say I do that once a year, but like every once in a while, it's like, hey, I'll pay closer attention to, hey, what's going on here?
Yeah.
But that's running mostly on autopilot in the background as we are moving and shaking on other things. A really cool testimony that I have about that couple is earlier this year, after taking on some known debt specifically for a purpose, we were able to eliminate all of that and put themselves in a better position with a rental property and all these things. And so 2026 has been a great year for them financially, where it goes from, hey, we're kind of carrying these things and we know we're carrying them on purpose for a reason, to, hey, we were able to offload all those things and really free up our income. And so really setting up very nicely for retirement. So those are the things we're mostly focused on. But yeah, we'll take a look at the pay period to pay period stuff every once in a while too.
Yeah, that's great. I ask for our listeners because I just can hear people already saying, you're telling me I have to do this every pay period for the rest of my life. so that's kind of why I don't want people to feel discouraged. But once you've kind of gotten the hang of this and it goes on then it really is just looking in on it rather than feeling like you have to plan every single time. Some of it does become, I think, on autopilot.
Yeah. So much of what they do paycheck by paycheck is like, it is very consistent and predictable. And then it really is just, they also know, hey, we have surplus every month. And it's more about the conversations that I'm having with them is more about like, how do you want to utilize those things to, like, their financial goals at this point are things like travel. And so it's like, hey, how much of our surplus can we tuck away because we know we want to travel here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. All right. So what is the challenge for this week then? The challenge for this week, I believe, should be go download the Payday Power Planner for free and start to take a look at your income and expenses broken down by the pay period rather than just the month to see if you are operating in a deficit or surplus. And then that will allow you to make decisions about how am I going to move forward, knowing that this pay period I have a surplus, but maybe next pay period I would be running into a deficit.
Challenge accepted.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Christ Centered Stewardship Podcast. Follow us on your favorite social media platform for more encouragement and support. And until next time, may the Lord keep you in perfect peace as you set your sight on Jesus.